Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And we are here today to discuss part 137. It is designed to be a crash course, and all you need to know to be an ag drone operator. So, the good news is you will receive these slides and hopefully in a few days, the YouTube video recording. So you don't have to worry about trying to write everything down that I say. The bad news, it is a crash course. We are going to move quickly, and we are waiting on one more guest presenter whose name is Jonathan Ruprecht, and he is trying to get into Zoom right now. So on that happy note, here are us. So Tony, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Tony Semick, based in Surprise, Arizona. I'm a drone service provider in Arizona.
Outstanding. And I am Sarah Nilsson, a pilot since 1994 of manned aviation. I am a attorney since 2014, specializing in aviation law, a published author of 5 aviation law textbooks, and a FAST team representative since 2015. I love everything flying, especially drones and now AAM. And on that note, I hope you join me on Thursday at 5 o'clock, where I'll give you an hour's worth of crash course on AAM in the industry today, and that's advanced air mobility. I'd also like to thank Craig Tompkins, who's a Scottsdale FISDO program manager for the FAST team, as well as Ernie Copeland for helping us get here today. And as soon as Jonathan gets in, we will let him have the floor and introduce himself. So that's him in the middle there. All right, so our objectives tonight. What is Part 137? What is an agricultural operation? How do we apply for a Part 137 operation? And how do we fill out the petition for an exemption? Also, how to apply for an AAOC. And throughout all of this, you'll be getting a lot of free resources for your toolkit. Outstanding. So here's the reg under Part 137, 14 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. Always encourage people to use ecfr.gov. Why? Because it's updated almost weekly and it's much more up to date than the hard copy that us manned pilots used to buy every year. 137 governs the use of aircraft, including drones, to dispense or spray substances, including disinfectants. So, Part 137. Under Part 137, the following aircraft operations are considered agricultural by nature. Dispensing any economic poison as defined in Section 137.3. Dispensing any other substance intended for plant nourishment, soil treatment, propagation of plant life, or pest control. Engaging in dispensing activities directly affecting agriculture, horticulture, or forest preservation. Note that the FAA considers chemicals used as disinfectants for viruses to fall in the category of economic poisons as defined in Section 137.3. So why don't we look at 137.3? Craig, if I could just interrupt this real quick, if you could email Jonathan Ruprecht the link once again, because he couldn't find it anywhere, and or maybe Tony too. You should
I
have him
can,
in your
yeah,
email
I can.
chain.
I'll do that. Happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So that I can
Absolutely.
continue with this goodness right here. All right, so
Yep.
we said we were going to look at 137.3. So, for the purposes of 137.3, here's what you need to know as to definitions. Now, when I looked up these definitions, I came across words I'd never understood before. I'm not a biology major by any means. So, let me just go into a little bit more detail. Agriculture is the cultivation of land for growing crops and raising livestock to produce food and other resources. Horticulture is the science and art of cultivating plants for human use. Forest preservation, protecting and maintaining forests for their ecological and economic benefits. And then we have nematodes. Nematodes are any of a major group of long cylinder-shaped worms that are parasites in animals or plants or live in soil or water. Plant regulator. Aside from promoting thick and healthy grass, plant growth regulators help cut down on lawn maintenance and ensure a deep green color. There are 5 groups of plant growth regulating compounds: auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, ethylene, and abscisic acid. Defoliants. A defoliant's a chemical dust or spray applied to plants to cause their leaves to drop off prematurely. Defoliants sometimes are applied to crop plants such as cotton in order to facilitate harvesting. And then we have desiccant. That's a drying agent. Farmers can prepare their fields using a desiccant to help dry down green material, primarily the upper canopy of crop and weeds. A desiccant will not hasten the maturity of green crops, but will aid in facilitating harvest and crop dry down. So there's as technical as it's going to get with the biology. Perfect. Craig, Jonathan says that he needs to be allowed in. I'm not sure if you can see him in there.
I don't have a doorway on this.
Oh dear.
Have him, if you could just tell Jonathan, check his admin at Ruprecht Law. I did send him the meeting invite, and if he clicks that, it should bring him right in.
Okay. Excuse me, everybody. All right, so here
Yep.
we go. Advisory Circular 137-1B. Certification process for agricultural aircraft operations. Not all substances fall under this regulation, so you should first check to see if the proposed operation is regulated by Part 137. If the substance you plan to dispense does fall within the definitions in 137.3, you're going to refer to the certification process for agricultural aircraft operators for guidance on the requirements you must meet before dispensing it. And so that's an advisory circular that's very, very important. All right, moving on. So, did Jonathan make it in? Okay. Before applying for Part 137, you must hold an FAA Part 107 remote pilot certificate. This certificate demonstrates you understand the regulations, operating requirements, and procedures for safely flying drones. And there you have it. You obtain this certificate in one of 2 ways. If you are a first-time pilot, at least 16 years old, able to read, write, speak, and understand English, and are in a physical and mental condition to safely fly a drone, you must study for, sit, and pass the initial aeronautical knowledge exam, the Unmanned Aircraft General Small UAG exam, at an FAA-approved knowledge testing center. This will cost you $175. And if you are one of the fortunate ones who hold a pilot certificate under 14 CFR Part 61, and you have completed a flight review within the previous 24 calendar months, all you do is complete the 107 Small UAS ALC 451 online training course with the FAA safety team. It is free, and there's the link to where it's at. You'll complete an IACRA, and that's the Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application, a web-based certification and rating application that guides you through the airman application process. You can either visit your local FSDO, have someone like Craig sign it off, or meet with an FAA designated pilot examiner, or an airman certification representative, or an FAA certificated flight instructor. Any one of those people can help you process that IACRA application. So if you plan on flying drones over 55 pounds, you may need to obtain an FAA third-class medical certificate as well. As of late 2024, a third time spraying operations. All right, moving on. So now here's the link. The first step is to create an account in MedExpress. Answer a series of medical questions and submit your application through MedExpress. After submission, print or save a copy of your application for your aviation medical examiner, who will need the confirmation number from the application. We recommend you also retain a copy for future reference. You need to complete the AME exam within 60 days of submitting the application on MedExpress, so contact a local AME for an appointment as soon as possible. Find one in your neighborhood by using that link on the screen. The cost of the medical is anywhere from $160 to $200 depending on the location, and certain medical conditions may require an EKG. An EKG is an electrocardiogram. It's a non-invasive test that records the electrical activity of the heart, and that may be at an additional cost. Whoops. What happened there? There we go. So it's important for all pilots, including certificated remote pilots, to keep their aviation knowledge up to date. If you have a remote pilot certificate, you're required to have completed one of the following online training courses within the previous 24 calendar months to operate under Part 107. The good news is that it's all free. Anyone who holds a Part 107 remote pilot certificate, regardless of aeronautical knowledge recency, must complete the Part 107 small UAS recurrent ALC 677 online training course. Part 107 remote pilots who are also certificated with a current flight review under Part 61 must complete Part 107 Small UAS Recurrent ALC 515 online training course. And you can read the Remote Pilot Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems Airman Certification Standards. The PDF is there on that link for more information on what's on that recurrent training. And let's talk drone registration now. Drones weighing less than 55 pounds, including the weight of the substance being dispensed, may operate under 14 CFR Part 107 and require exemption from Section 107.36, carriage of hazardous material, as well as several 137 regulations. Petitioners must apply for their FAA number through FAA Drone Zone. 14 CFR 107.36 deals with the carriage of hazardous material. A small unmanned aircraft may not carry hazardous material. For purposes of this section, the term hazardous material is defined in 49 CFR 171.8. So you know what's coming next. We're going to go ahead and look at that 171.8. Hazardous material means a substance or material that the Secretary of Transportation has determined is capable of posing an unreasonable risk to health, safety, and property when transported in commerce, and has designated as hazardous under Section 5103 of Federal Hazardous Materials Transportation Law, U.S. Code 5103. The term includes hazardous substances, materials designated as hazardous in the hazardous materials table, and materials that meet the defining criteria for hazard classes and divisions per 173 of this subchapter. So we're going to look at this table quite briefly, and I think Jonathan is here.
He is in.
Oh,
Welcome.
well, hello. Jonathan, before I move to the next slide, would you like to introduce yourself?
You may be muted, Jonathan.
Oh my Lord, the technical problems of Jonathan Ruprecht today.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
I
can.
can.
Oh man, this is
Welcome.
Beautiful.
it's like
Finally.
everything is going totally crazy all of a sudden. It was so sorry about that. Hi, I'm Jonathan Ruprecht and I have computer problems, but you can what I lack in internet technical kind of capability of solving, I can make up for in solving your legal problems. So I am an aviation attorney and also commercial pilot and flight instructor, and I do drone law, and so that's what I do.
Thank you. And phew, are you still reading Part 108?
Yes, it's 700 something pages. I will be reading that for some time.
7:31.
Yes.
I know. I'll be up till midnight. All right, so back to the slides. So I've included this snippet, as I was saying, this screenshot and the link And you can scroll through all the substances. The link should be enough if that's where you want to look for whether what you have is a hazardous material. That's a good place to start. Okay, so now drones weighing 55 pounds or more. Let's talk about them. They're operated under Part 91 and Part 137 and require exemption from several regulations in 14 CFR Parts 61, 91, and 137. Petitioners must apply for their N number through the Civil Aviation Registry Electronic Services, we call CARES, or by mail. For more information, you're going to see that link. CARES is the Civil Aviation Registry Electronic Services, which offers limited online aircraft registration services for aircraft owners who classify as individuals, corporations, and LLCs. These folks can submit their aircraft registration applications online and you can upload legal and supplemental documents, receive auto-generated notifications, request N numbers, make online payments, and so create your account if that's what you plan on doing in the ag world. Awesome. So let's talk now for the drone that weighs 55 pounds or more. What about other exemptions? Well, Part 137.41 of the FAA's rules for agricultural aircraft ops describes pilot and command requirements for aerial agricultural operations that were originally made for crewed aircraft and therefore don't apply to drone operations. So you guessed it. We're going to now review 137.19. And so, again, you'd need an exemption from the need to hold a private pilot certificate, commercial or ATP, and demonstrate the knowledge and skills. Additionally, you'd need an exemption from sections of the Part 61 rules on certification, pilots, flight instructors, and ground instructors that were originally made for crewed aircraft. Sections of the Part 91 general operating and flight rules that were originally made for crewed aircraft. So that's where you're going to find all that. Jonathan, would you like to chime in and give me a break?
Sure, I can do that. And so there's multiple regulations that you need to obtain an exemption for. And it's not necessary, but pretty much most of the time you're going to need to get an exemption from especially all of the regulations that are listed here. There's multiple ones, and there's 91, 60, and 137, and there's also some over in 61.3. Let's go to the next slide, please.
All right. So those are your links for all those, for your toolkits. Like I said, you'll all be receiving a copy of this presentation and the recording after I receive it from Craig. Those are where you'll go for registration, small UAS on Part 48, the larger ones on Part 47. And that's where you access the portal FAA Drone Zone, where you'll create your account. And this
For
will
Part 48.
Yes, and this will for Part 48, and this will depend on, be careful whether you're recreational or commercial. And like I said, you want to be on the commercial side for this. Awesome. The registration is a cool $5 and it's good for 3 years under Part 107. All right. So here is the remote ID rule, Part 89. Remember that you need remote ID for all of this stuff. And then we get to registering each individual device. Remember, you've got standard remote ID or the remote ID broadcast module. They are also unique to each one. You need to make sure that that is added to your registration as well. All right, you will register the drone and receive the FAA registration certificate. It's on you to go ahead and label all your drones with the registration number before you fly them. This is the little PDF that shows you how that should be done. They have to be marked externally. So we've explained how to register the drone weighing less than 55 pounds, but what do you do if it weighs more? Well, you're going to follow the traditional way under Part 47, and I've given you some links to assist you from ecfr.gov. The traditional aircraft registration by mail under Part 47 is required if your UAS weighs 55 pounds or more, if your UAS is owned by a trustee under a trust agreement, and when the UA owner uses a voting trust to meet US citizenship requirements. It's available for the UAS that need an N number registration to operate outside the US when public recording is desired for a UA loan, lease, or ownership documents. Registrations required for government UA as well. All UA owned by agencies, office, or subdivisions of the US, other than aircraft of the armed forces, must be registered in accordance with 47 and 48. So there's the address for that. You're going to need this document. This is the aircraft registration application, Form 8050-1. And then, if you are an LLC, then you need an additional form to show that the owner of the LLC, the manager of the LLC, is defined as a US citizen. And that is going to be also on that form. And then comes with all of that fun stuff, a notarized affidavit establishing ownership of the UA by the applicant. And you'll fill that using the aircraft bill of sale form 8050-2. You can find it at that link. All right. So now you get an N number. It's assigned to the registered UA. If a special N number was reserved in advance by the UA owner for this registration, then you'll assign it in that form in the blank. If not, you can request it when filing the application and other documents for registration. Include a letter that lists several N number choices and the $10 special number fee. The first listed number verified as available will be assigned to the aircraft. A random N number will be assigned at no cost if the indicated blanks on the registration forms are left empty, or a random number is requested. All right, so now requests to operate outside of these routine agricultural related operations or requests to use aircraft without prior 44807 approval may take longer to review. And now your question is, what is 49 US Code 44807? I think I'll hand that over to Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So 4407, it's this provision. Some of you guys remember back in the day, there was section 333. Well, that's the guts of that. It's still here. It's just renamed. It's at a different location, and that's in Title 49, section 44807. And so still pretty much the same thing. It is the ability for now the FAA, before it was the why it took so long, by the way. It used to be the Department of Transportation had that authority, and so it kind of had to go from the FAA up to the DOT. And now with recent laws that have been passed, it's actually now at the FAA level, so it's gonna be a lot faster now. So it's great. The idea is basically the particular aircraft in a particular configuration is deemed to not need an airworthiness certificate. So it solves the problem with 91.7. How is your aircraft airworthy? Well, if your aircraft doesn't need an airworthiness certificate because the FAA determined that under 4407, then that's how that's done. And it's always the analysis of that aircraft needing an airworthiness certificate is always done in the context of an exemption, conditions and limitations of some sort. So that's a really, really important point there. What a lot of people are doing for 137 type of operations is that your operations pretty much, there's a couple main types of exemptions. And so a lot of people are basically just doing a 4407 determination on a particular make and model of aircraft, and then saying we're going to be operating according to that condition limitations that have been pre-approved. So it's kind of more rapidly done. So there's a lot of interesting little points to all of this, but if you want to find an overall list of these aircraft that have been previously determined, there is a docket on regulations.gov. It's FAA-2023-1271. Some of us just call it the 1271 list. And it's a constantly updated list that the FAA puts new aircraft on it that have had a 44 out of 7 determinant. It'll list the make, the model, and the max takeoff weight. And then what that FAA is wisely doing now is they're granting a lot of exemptions that say that you can fly any aircraft that is listed on there up to the max takeoff weight listed on there. So as more of those get updated, you get more and more aircraft you're capable of actually flying, especially under 137, and with the newer exemptions now that we're obtaining for what's called the facilitation of flight instruction or facilitation of flight experience, because technically you can't use the term flight instruction because there's no real Part 61 certificate involved. So you're facilitating flight experience, and they all reference back to this 1271 list. So next slide.
Jonathan, could I ask you to put that link in the chat?
Sure. Yeah,
12.
I'll do that right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Great teamwork. Okay, so this special authority for certain UAS, remember the small UAS rule 14 CFR Part 107 is only applicable to unmanned aircraft that weigh less than 55 pounds at takeoff. Not only is there a max weight, but there's also a limitation to what rules can be waived under Part 107. To fly an unmanned aircraft that exceeds the max weight limit of 107, or your mission includes a non-waiverable rule, you may apply for an exemption in accordance with 14 CFR Part 11 and the congressional authority that Jonathan just mentioned under 44807. And so I put those links there for everybody to have. All right. So I mentioned Part 11. So why don't we hand this over to Jonathan? Thank you for that link. And we'll talk a little bit about this.
Sure. Yeah. So Part 11 is where you look to figure out how to do exemptions or rulemakings. It's the set of regulations there. And specifically, Part 11 requires you. By the way, if you want to know how it works, it comes actually from back under President Clinton's under his administration. They had this kind of idea of doing the rulemaking and the questions and regulations in this like question and answer format. So that's why if you look at Part 11, you'll kind of see how it has this question and answer format, which I kind of somewhat actually appreciate. There are a couple provisions in Part 11 that explain how to file a petition. You can file via mail. I would suggest probably not doing that. You can file it electronically. There's a particular docket that the FAA has that's kind of like what they call the shell docket. So you just kind of dump whatever you want exemption related there. Additionally, over in Part 11, I believe it's 11.81 or 11.87, there is a particular regulation that lists out explicitly every single thing to put in your exemption. So what I would suggest is if you're actually trying to do a petition for exemption for yourself, you would put just make those sections where it says you must include the following, make those the headings for your petition and just follow that. It's really pretty easy to meet that criteria. At the same time, there are many people that kind of freestyle, whatever they want to, they freestyle and they put the stuff in, and then they get a letter from the FAA saying, we can't process this because, we don't know what you're really asking here on a few points. So just follow the regulations. You can just read it. It's free and just follow it. There's nothing really unique about that. You might get into some interesting arguments now on what is considered a mitigation that is safe, that produces an equivalent level of safety as the regulations. That's kind of where you want to be spending your time, not so much on the trivial stuff like what the regulations tell you on what you're supposed to put in your petition.
Thank you. Tony, did you have anything you wanted to add so far? I've been ignoring you. My bad.
No, you're good. I've just been looking at the chat. We don't have any other chat questions in. And Jonathan, I hope you didn't mind me spamming your server, sending you this meeting invite over and over again, but
No,
you
it's
made
probably
it, so it's all good.
All right. So Jonathan just got done talking about Part 81, and that is what we have next. So this is that list he was saying where you've got to include all of this stuff. And like he said, take those things as your template and just start plugging them in.
Exactly. It's super easy. Just do that. Don't get cute and reinvent a wheel here. Just take that wheel, copy, paste, done.
Awesome. All right, let's see. Are these assigned to a person or a business if an LLC?
I can take that. I mean, you can have either scenario. You can have an exemption for a person, and you can have an exemption for a business. Either one.
Wonderful. All right. So you're going to go ahead and submit that, retain the docket information, the docket confirmation receipt, and you've got all this information available to you. Like he said, probably not the best way to do it by snail mail, but you'll receive an email from their office of exemptions, and then that'll be their decision. Keep that. It's also a copy of that is also placed on the public docket, and then you'll go from there. So,
Yeah, by the way, if you are submitting anything confidential, what you should do is when you submit that, you should label that document, because this is all going to be public record. You should label it, like if you're attaching confidential information, label it like confidential dash whatever the name is, super secret sauce. So, and then in the comment period, there's a comment box label, hey, confidential information attached, please redact. So what's going to happen is when you submit it, there's going to be a federal employee that's going to read that and then go, ah, okay. And they're going to then basically redact so that the public is not going to be able to see everything, but the government workers are. So that's a really important point, because there are all sorts of people on the internet that have not paid attention to that. And I have found numerous things in the regulatory dockets, especially when the FAA started asking for information with the 137s. So people were they didn't really know what to kind of like provide. So they kind of like in the overabundance started applying everything. So there's just, if you find people's IACRA stuff and other things, you can find people's birth dates, their social security numbers. And I've found all of those on regulations.gov and had to notify government people, be like, please redact this because I can steal this guy's identity right now. So be careful what you put on in there. You can request redaction for certain files.
So
love
better
it.
or worse, I think you just answered Michael's question in the chat about, are these assigned to a person or a business if an LLC? I believe you're stating that it's a person because of the certification. Is that correct, Jonathan, or no?
Great question. So how they're when you're dealing with like certain types of exemptions. So if you're dealing with specifically Part 137 type of exemptions, the FAA is doing some gatekeeping because they kind of got tired of paperwork mill types of people that were filing paperwork, and the people were not putting an effort to obtain remote pilot certificates or in-number registrations. And so the FAA now has gatekeepers, so that as soon as you file a Part 137 exemption, you better have some information that you can file with it. That would be the remote pilot certificate of the chief supervisor. Who is the chief supervisor? What's their physical address? Not just a PO box. The registration number. They'll have all this information you have to submit. Otherwise, they're not going to continue processing a Part 137 exemption. Now, that is an internal process. That's not regulatory, but that's how the FAA is choosing to manage their resources. But if you do another type of exemption that is out there for like closed set cinematography, facilitation of flight experience, or something like that, aerial data collection or demo flying, you are not asked all of those questions on the personnel like you are with the 137. So going back to that, can the exemption be for, like, what can it be for? You can have it for LLCs, corporations. You can have it for government entities. You can have it for a whole bunch. I mean, the U.S. military, Army has an exemption for lights out flying. So an exemption is just a piece of paper, and it can be for all sorts of things. It's like very extremely flexible. You're not limited to I'm trying to think of what you cannot. I mean, a rock. I guess you can't do a rock. It has it's pretty much everything else. So.
Love it. Awesome. All right, so we've answered that question. So this is your link for the regulations.gov, and you can look at examples of exemptions on there. Okay, so some little information here. Basic information. If you don't include all the information, you'll receive a request for information by email. It will slow down the process significantly if you have to keep doing that. So try and fill it out perfect from the get-go. And here's where I was going to talk to you about marking files and file names as confidential or proprietary if you wish for them to be handled as such. But Jonathan's already gone over that. Note that you have to have a physical address. PO box is not acceptable. And I think that goes back to us lawyers because we have to have someone we can actually physically serve. All right.
Just want to follow up on that.
Yeah.
As you submit that information, if you start matching up the person's government ID with their name and everything, some states trigger that under PII. So just throwing that out there, you just don't want to start sending that out in the blind, which it's weird because the FAA asks for that at the same time. You're kind of like, well, how do you submit that? So just
Yeah.
raising that because there are ways you can send things encrypted to the FAA, but it's extremely annoying and difficult. And for the average person, they're not doing that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Good to note. All right. So moving to the next thing. You're going to complete the Form 8710-3 and submit it in there. Would you like to talk to that, Jonathan, if you wish?
Sure, yeah. So this is I mean, it's a pretty straightforward box right there. So I can kind of walk through it right here. Type, I pretty much tell everybody just to go commercial. There's not really a need to go to private. If you were doing like the non-exempted way, private and commercial make a big difference between a private certificate versus a commercial certificate. There's a very big difference there in those airman certificates. You would check also economic poisons, and then a little bit to the right there, you would do original. Put the name, address of the applicant, telephone number, box 2, 3, principal operations base. You're never pretty much going to be at an airport, so pretty much put your city and state and telephone number. If you're operating as, so if you look at the box 4 right there with some things to the next of, like to the right of it, individual corporation partnership. If you are an LLC, you're going to put into the other category, the other box to the right, you're going to put LLC right there. Box 5, you're going to put the chief supervisor's information. Box 6, and it's really hard to see. There's like this really little middle line right there. You're going to put remote pilot certificate and then the certificate number held. Grade. Most of the people are probably watching this do not have a Part 61 private or a Part 61 commercial, or pretty much you leave all those blank. And you leave the ratings area. You pretty much leave it blank unless you have it. 7A. You don't, most people do not have waivers. You're getting exemptions and operating certificates. You're not getting waivers. So you're going to answer 7A, no. Okay. And then 7B, blank, date issued, blank, 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 blank. That's all going to be blank. Then you get to box 8, you're going to put make and model. Can it do liquid and solid? And then you put remote registration number as well as number of that aircraft. 9, you put the names and cert numbers. Yeah, and then you just sign it and send it into that email address. And additionally, when you're sending it in, you're going to want to send in your exemption at the same time. And if you're sending in your remote pilot certificate, they will sometimes ask on how to prove your currency, because your remote pilot certificate does not prove your currency. Your aeronautical knowledge test that you pass is what determines it. Most people don't have that handy. So what you can do is just go on to the FAA's website and do the recurrent, online knowledge exam for free, write the test, and then print that out and send that in. So those are some things to kind of prevent delays. You can just batch that all up, send it into the FAA, and then somewhere around like 2 to 8 weeks later, you'll probably get the operating certificate back via email.
Yes, very good. That's covered everything I wanted to talk about in that slide. And before you joined, we already went into the how to redo your recurrent training on which ALC on the FAST Teams website. So we've already covered that. All right, so now after you're certified, you clearly display your N number on your aircraft. Always carry all your certificates with you when flying your drone. Register any additional drones you intend to operate, and renew and maintain your Part 107 certification every 24 calendar months. Adhere to all Part 137 operational and safety requirements, and keep detailed records, not like this clown. Keep detailed records of your operations, including substances applied and locations. And then just wanted to mention a couple of notices that have been canceled. In case you're looking at old data, I found a lot of old data when I was going through preparing for this webinar tonight. And just keep in mind that on June 13, 2023, the FAA published this notice 8900.659, Part 137 UAS certification. It was then canceled on June 10 of 2024 and replaced by notice 8900.704. And that too was just recently canceled on June 10 of 2025. As of today, correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, it wasn't replaced by anything.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I don't. This is like an ever evolving thing. I don't. There's some of this is also kind of just. There's what the FAA puts out via the notices, and there's also just kind of like almost, if you will, tribal law and how they email you, and then you have to call them and you figure it out. But off the top of my head, I don't remember.
All right. So now we're going to get to the fun part of questions. So on this UAS Support Center, if you want to learn more about this, you've got this link, uashelp@fa.gov, always. And then I always have to mention this because in addition to all the federal laws that we talk about in these webinars through the FAST team, there's also state and local laws that pop up around the country that also have their part in ag operations or any other drone operations for that matter. So I'm assuming that if you're into the ag UAS world of Part 137, you're familiar with the State Department of Agriculture requirements for your state, as well as insurance requirements. And if not, you can use this free resource because while the FAA regulates the airspace, states and local governments regulate the land from which drones take off and land. So this free ebook, which I have the honor of updating almost daily, published by Embry-Riddle, thanks to their Office of Open Education Resources, which makes textbooks more affordable to students and the public, and free is more affordable. There's the link right there. Not only will you find every state or territory in the US, including cities and local ordinances, but also the world's drone laws and, since last year, advanced air mobility laws and news for every country and every state in the US. And so on that note, I just want to plug Thursday's webinar because we're going to be spending 1 hour talking exclusively about advanced air mobility because this is coming to a town near you quite soon. I'm going to quickly go to the chat. We have a question. So keeping the test result sheets is important. Yes.
I agree with Michael on that. I always keep it's the proof of recurrency that you need, especially when you go to update your insurance policy on commercial drone operations as well. So keeping that results certificate, if you will, is extremely important. It's dated.
Awesome. All right. So on that note, we're going to open it up now for some Q&A with Jonathan and the public. I'm going to go straight here. Let's go there and give him your toughest questions. I guarantee you he's the expert on Part 137. Give him your toughest questions on anything we have mentioned or didn't mention. And if you're curious about today, we had the NPRM for BVLOS come out. I've already gotten halfway through that. If you have any questions on that, I could take them as well. I don't think you will, though. Let's stick with 137. Go ahead, ask away.
Jonathan, craziest case that you've had to handle on aviation, on agriculture and drones.
Okay. There are ag people are a little bit more uh rambunctious than some other parts of the industries. Regulatory compliance isn't really in their DNA, let's just say. I mean, they're farmers. They kind of just don't like the federal government. So they kind of have different varying levels of that genetic disposition. And so that has led to all sorts of interesting situations. So you have these people that are having getting into usage violations with the regulations intentional. You also have people that are doing unintentional type of accident situations. You also have people that are having their drones crash, right? So they're just kind of, if you kind of look at the continuum here of like all the issues that we deal with, right? We have regulatory stuff, and then you have like, man, this is not a regulatory violation, but your drone crashed or something, right? And so if you look actually on NTSB website, and there's also NASA, and there's other aviation databases, there's actually quite a few interesting drone crashes that have happened over the years with crop dusting drones. There's one notable exception, I mean, not exception, example where there was a drone that was coming down to land, and then what happened was that right as it got about to land, it kind of just like bolted over and then hit the person and broke their shoulder. And there's other just numerous examples of, heard it through the grapevine, the stuff that never got reported to the NTSB where people are crashing drones into people. There's one situation I know of that the guy had to get life flighted out because he took it in the stomach from a large heavy lift. There was another guy on Reddit that what you kind of piece it together. This is before they had the no VO exemptions, and he was explaining how he was doing operations on the side of the road, and then he never mentioned that there was no VO. Basically, this guy stops with a truck and jumped out with a gun to harass him, and basically, so there was that example, and we couldn't figure out if he reported anything and probably why he might have not, because I didn't see anywhere in the thread that there was a visual observer involved. So it pretty much meant he was probably not compliant. So that's probably why he didn't report. So there's all sorts of interesting examples of violations, intentional, unintentional, people crashing, and then drones getting shot out of the sky. Numerous clients have had their drones get shot out of the sky. And that's an interesting one because you're trying to figure out how to respond to the situation. And I think when people are kind of dealing with this, some of the biggest things that scare me to death as with how to respond to everything here is how are you going to handle fires? A lot of people are kind of like thinking about all sorts of other things, but what about fires? What do I mean by that? You're storing them at your house and you're charging them unattended. Yeah, it's a really bad idea, guys. Don't do that. In the event that you were watching them and they were attended, if there was a thermal runaway of some sort happening, how are you going to actually get that out of your house? Can you store them in, an ammo can of some sort or canister or something? Quickly grab, charge it right by the door that's unlocked so you can quickly grab it and chuck it out. And if you don't really appreciate a LiPo battery fire, please go YouTube some LiPo battery fires and the numerous examples of people having their houses burned down because they'll leave these things unattended. Additionally, when your drone gets shot down, there's a good chance it'll probably catch stuff on fire. So thinking of that out, figure that out. Also, if your drone crashes, it'll probably start setting stuff on fire. There's numerous there on my website. I have a whole article I put together on drone crashes, and you guys should really pay attention to that because a lot of people don't really think that a drone crash will happen. But and actually, it's interesting. Out of all the articles I've had on my website, like for search engine optimization, the one that had the worst amount of like people reading it was the crash one. It's just like that's not gonna happen to me. I'm okay. It's not gonna happen. And then somehow
that's
people
just
calling
ego.
me. Yeah, and then they're calling
that's just
me.
ego.
Yeah, and then they're telling me like, "Oh yeah, John, I crashed into what?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"You crashed into what?" Okay, ooh, that's okay. And so when you crash these drones, what is your response plan? And your crew members, how well are they going to be able to respond? Do you have an ABC extinguisher? Do you have two of them? And are you able to run and do your Jesse Owens impression for 100 yards with two ABC extinguishers? And pretty much what you're going to do is by the time you're there, the drone's already on fire, but it's already spread how far. You're going to now have to try to put everything else out and then use your Nikes with put out, and you're there until the fire department. It's you, your Nikes, and do you properly equip your people? There's situations right now. I mean, there's one situation I know of right now where some people got in trouble because they didn't properly equip their their pilots, and there was a fire that happened because of that. And if you actually look at some of the drone fires that happen, there's the news reports. It'll be like how many acres of land get burned up, like a lot. There was one that I know of that actually had like a forced evacuation out of one particular area of homes because the fire got so good, just big. So I don't think people appreciate fires as much as I do. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what scares me. Like that can do a lot of damage. So
Jonathan, I was going to ask you to put your website there for everyone, and then Rufus asked the same thing. And then there's a question by Michael. I take a visual observer is sort of mandatory for heavy drones. What's your thoughts?
great question. It used to be, but the exemptions were changed. So exemption condition and limitations are like ever evolving things. So they're constantly evolving. You have to pay very, very close attention. The FAA doesn't really put out a lot of information, so it's kind of like us paying attention to it. And so, noticeable things that have happened in the last, like, let's say, year or two. So well, a couple of years ago, we used to have to go at the FISDO level and get our operating certificates. That was really hard. And that weeded out a lot of stuff, but it was really hard, and it was basically killing the poor FISDOs when you got tons of these people. And so then the FAA got rid of that with the exemptions, and so now you basically you get an exemption, and then you apply for your operating certificate. There's no in-person knowledge and skill examination. And then as time went on, the FAA changed the conditions and limitations to now allow for day and night flying for drones, operations of one, two, or three drones simultaneously, and VO or no VO operations. Recently, we just obtained for some military veterans the downgrading where we used to have third class medical all the time. Now it's third class medical only for night flights. So daylight flights, you do not need a third class medical anymore because lots of military veterans with PTSD had a really hard time obtaining third class medicals and going through the process of that. There's also numerous other people that are on certain types of medications where they could not obtain a third class medical. So that was recently changed. So for daylight, highly autonomous drone operations with minimal control input, you do not need a third class medical, but for night operations, you would. Additionally, the conditions limitations were at max of 30 miles per hour ground speed, but then the FAA changed that up to 40 miles per hour. So those are kind of some of the latest changes that have happened.
So, Jonathan, there's another question. Are the regulations limiting a 44807 approved aircraft originally designated as an ag drone from the manufacturer to do external load type of operations or non-spray operations?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if you look at the list on the 12, the FAA, that go to the docket that I put in there before with the 1271 list, there's a column that'll say whether it is approved for 137 type of operations. And so it kind of like two columns. It's approved and then 137 approved. So if you're asking the question whether you can take a 137 type of drone and then I guess take the guts off of it is primarily the idea, and then switch it over to flying under I'd have to think a little bit more about that because you potentially might have some problems because you might be violating what the manufacturer has done and modified it and might run afoul of another part of the conditions and limitations. That'd be much more of like a case by case analysis on that, depending upon what was being done and what aircraft.
And Jonathan, in case you didn't know, we had a very tragic King Air crash over here on the reservation up at Chinle. I've actually flown up there myself. It was a medical flight, and Ed posted that he lost two good friends. So send our prayers out for the family this afternoon. It was horrible. Three members of the FISDO from Scottsdale just left to go up there, Craig said, right before we started our show. It's hot, it's dry, its density altitude is terrible up here. I've flown into Chinle in summer with supplies when I was helping the COVID effort. I used my airplane to take supplies up there for the res, and yeah, it is not a good place by any means. All right, guys, I don't see any more questions. You have 4 minutes left. Ask away. We've covered a lot. Like I said, this is being recorded. You'll have this recording after this week. And also, if you attended the other two webinars, those will be coming your way as well. We just had a little delay getting the recordings, and we'll get this plus the slideshow to you later. And don't forget Thursday, if you want to know about advanced air mobility, that's all on the agenda for that whole hour. Lots of fun things going on with that, especially with the executive orders putting in the EIPP, and you'll hear about that on Thursday. Jonathan, thank you for coming today. Sorry for the technological glitches at the beginning.
Yeah, no problem about that. I just posted into the chat. I have an entire article just on drone sprayers, so that might be of interest to a bunch of people in understanding drone spraying and the economics and all of that. There's a whole lot to that. It's like a 20, like let's see, 26,000 word article last I looked at it. So it'll
Wow.
take a while to get through it, but
That's a lot. That's a lot. It's like updating my ebook. It's always something to update all the time.
exactly. I mean, it's a constantly evolving area with 137, and then there's yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on right here, and how to make the whole process more efficient. Even going back to the registration situation with like cares and stuff. Some of the important things, even when shopping for drones, for example, like let's talk about 137 and shopping for drones. A lot of times people just go, I'm gonna go buy a spray drone. We're good to go. Well, hold on there. Does that drone actually have standard remote identification? There, and if you look at my LinkedIn article, put out about a month ago, there was a table I put together of all of the 44807 aircraft and how many of them had remote identification. More than half did not, which is a big problem because you cannot fly beyond line of sight. So with the exemptions for beyond line of sight, if you want to obtain one of those or under Part 108 in the future, you're going to have a standard ID aircraft. And so some of these aircraft that are being imported, you're not going to be able to do that unless you obtain a COA, and that's going to be really annoying on a case by case basis to do. So that's a really important point when you're buying these things. Um, Jump on the Facebook groups and start seeing how many of these things are crashing. That's always a really good point to see, but also at the same time, taking just because a lot of them are crashing, doesn't mean that there's a high per capita rate. There's certain ones that are just crashing a lot because a lot of people are flying them, but you also want to double click in to potentially see if there is a pattern developing. Look at NTSB stuff, the NASA forms reports, and see kind of what has popped up over time. So those are kind of some of the major ones. Also, remote ID, when you're trying to figure out the remote identification number, please put down the remote identification number on your in number registration and triple check that, because there is a bunch of funness that has been going on with certain people uh not putting out that information correctly, and then people incorrectly registering their drones with aircraft serial numbers or some weird derivative of that, and it's not the remote identification number. So that's like, you got to really pay attention to that. And when people are filing paperwork for you, you should probably ask them what are their qualifications of why they think they're capable of filing paperwork for you. That's another really important point, because we've seen numerous examples over the time where people have thought that they could just file paperwork, but they would mess up on certain things where people would file under 55-pound type of exemptions for aircraft that were 55 pounds and heavier. And you're like, come on, man, that's just like there's examples of like that. There's just numerous, I've seen egregious examples over the years. So when you're working with somebody, ask just basic questions of, are they an attorney if they're filing their legal paperwork? Can they answer your legal questions? Do they have insurance? Stuff like that would be very helpful. If you kind of just do some due diligence, we can weed out, even if they call themselves an attorney, please double check into that. Like, look me up on the Florida bar website, see if I have a disciplinary history, because there was one guy that was running around and he was claiming to be an attorney. Yeah, he was an attorney, past tense. Aha. So I was like, I wonder where this guy was. I was paying attention to the accent. I was like, this guy's from this particular area. And so I started just searching for his name. And lo and behold, I found his name. And he was a disbarred attorney. He was actually blacklisted on their website, running around now in person, orally communicating to people that he was an attorney. And so if anybody says anything, you should always just double check them. Do not take their word for it. Double check, ask for references, please, for the love of everything. Ask for references. Jump in the Facebook group and ask for opinions. There's a lot. And then also, if you're doing that, if you're getting opinions, ask the next question. Do you presently get any referral fees from whoever you're recommending? Because it is like, I mean, everybody and their dog is referring everybody to everybody because they're getting kickbacks left and right, which should definitely cause you to, maybe rethink like, well, you know, How good are they? Well, you're obviously going to hustle them because you're making some cash off of that. So always just ask that follow-up question. Did you recommend them because you're getting kickbacks? Because that's pretty numerous as well.
Good. Well, that's a really important stuff to note. And while you were all talking about that, the chat was going crazy. Michael wanted the BVLOS rule that was over there that came out this morning. So I've put that in the chat. The FAA also put out a nice little fact sheet where they summarize really very shortly some of the stuff. And so I put that in the link as well. And then somebody asked for the link for Thursday. That's in there as well. I don't think we've missed any questions, have we, Tony?
Don't think we have. I'll throw in the link the link to the book, your book.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a free if one quick last touch
And
base on
on
this.
Jonathan's note,
Yeah.
I do not get kickbacks from Tony when he does that. A
Yeah.
free book, and it's Embry Riddle's publishing it. So me and the
Yes.
students, we all update it every day, and I don't get paid for that too. It's one of those royalty-free books that I publish.
That's a
Um,
labor of love, and it's
it
really
is. It
appreciated
is
by the
indeed. And
community.
tonight I'll be adding in 108 stuff, the NPRM, so that'll be fun. And also on that note, you can look me up too on the Arizona bar, and there's been no discipline. So we're in good standing, just like Jonathan. So it's 6 o'clock. Craig, do you want to end the show? Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Craig.
Yep. Take care.
Appreciate you all listening in and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, just wanted to include my thanks to you, Sarah, and Jonathan and Tony. Just man, appreciate all the great information, and it's just so nice to have folks that actually know what they're talking about, getting the word out about this important stuff. So I am going to end the recording.